Welcome back. I'm Ken. We're meeting with Mike. Mike, we've talked about metrics and how what we measure can be misleading or helpful.
Yes.
Where do we go from here?
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about is understanding how the environment in which people work or worship or school or home influences behavior.
Oh, environment. Go ahead.
Um, I was thinking of different examples. One, if you go to the malls have a very unique design in the sense that you usually have a big work area of some sort for food, bright, clear, usually some low-key music. The aisles are very wide and high ceilings. So it's not just a matter of uh, choice, because if you're going to design it in a sense of making the most of the space that you got, you wouldn't have all that extra space and air, the ampleness of the place. The same thing with casinos. Not that I've spent any time in casinos, but my mom used to love it. And once in a while, I would go with her to a place up in California. And there again, you walk in, right away, there's a certain noise level. Ding, 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 ding. And if somebody hits a certain amount of money, guess what? Bing, 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 bing. Everybody knows that somebody won. Um, Another time I read something that they also pumped oxygen into the area.
Really?
So I don't know if it's true or not, but the point is the whole rationale behind it is it kind of revs up people, the system.
Interesting.
So you look at that and you see right away that those guys aren't doing that because they love you. They love your money, yes. Uh, but the point is that it's designed to encourage uh, or to entice people to that environment. The other thing also is that there's no clocks. Why no clocks? Because they don't want you to be aware of how much time you spent there. They want you to stay. Because the longer you stay, the more they make, that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
So there is a very specific design, and the design is motivated by how do people respond to it, kind of thing. Another example is I don't know if you go to Costco, but at Costco, at different times during the day, you have people offering samples of food that, I was used to, when I was in Japan, I used to laugh and say, let's go and eat at Costco. Because you literally could have a meal
Yes.
just going around sampling stuff. The same thing with Trader Joe. Trader Joe has a very modest booth, but they have usually something that they want you to try, kind of thing. So they want you to not only to sample the stuff, but it's you go there with an enriched experience, if you call it that, in some ways.
Hmm.
It's more than just going in and like in the supermarket, grabbing your stuff and out you go, kind of thing. So there's a whole uh, dynamic that takes place in reaction to the environment that we find ourselves in. Uh, and it's something that, for instance, Bratton in New York with the police department understood, and they developed, not them, but the academicians called it uh, broken windows. And that was an experiment in San Francisco, a professor from Stanford. They took two cars and then in similar neighborhoods, two neighborhoods. In one neighborhood, they lifted the hood of the car and they broke one of the windows. And a few days later, they went back to see what happened. And guess what? Well, the initial damage was minor compared to what they found when they got there. You know, the thing had been not demolished, but pretty much taken out everything and anything that was worth anything.
Wow.
So they said, oh, that's interesting. What would happen if we did the same thing at the other location? Because at the other location, they just left the car there. That's it. So they did the same thing. They raised the hood and broke a window. And same thing happened. So their conclusion was it's not a matter of where you left it or where the neighborhood that you left it. Granted, in some places they'll be more prone to that kind of pilferage than others, but the point was is that the condition that you leave things in will entice people or will foster a certain behavior. So when Bratton went to New York City, the first thing that he tackled is graffitis all over the place, or the people that were stopping cars in the traffic to supposedly wash their windshield. Sometimes you get more dirt on your windshield than you started with. But anyway, that's another story. But the point was, you got rid of all those things. Those were petty kinds of things, petty kinds of, I don't know if you call them crimes, but activities. And their point was, is that fosters further increase in the nature of behavior that's not socially acceptable.
Yeah. Interesting.
So it's kind of interesting because that you put that in contrast, say, for instance, with some of the philosophy that liberal cities have had recently, where they say, well, minor crimes we won't prosecute anymore. You know, like in California, you have a rule that says if you steal less than $1,000, therefore, that's not a crime. You know, it's a, hey, you needed it kind of thing. Uh,
Wow.
So the point is, and then we look at what's happening in the streets. We look at crime rate in New York and Chicago and places like that, and you scratch your head. So why? You know, well, the point is you fostered that environment that triggered, not triggered, but fostered that kind of behavior. So then the question becomes, you know, is that important in other settings, like in churches or like in school or even families? So social norms are crucial. And they call it also social signaling. In other words, if this is acceptable, well, let's push the envelope a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then you see, hey, we're out of control. So it's very, very important. Uh, Another episode that I saw one time is I read that Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, at the beginning, he set a 10-foot rule. And the 10-foot rule was is if you're an employee and you're within 10 feet of a customer, you have to ask them if you can help them find what they were after.
Interesting.
So, nowadays it's not very, sometimes you have to chase somebody to go and say, where do I find this kind of thing? But the point was is that he recognized that the behavior of their staff will influence customer satisfaction. And customer satisfaction, then they'll return or they'll buy more or whatever it is that is the outcome. Nowadays, it's very rare to go to a grocery store or most stores and not be thanked for coming after you left the checkout, you know. Well, that was unheard of 10, 15 years ago, you know. Now it's, but I realize that guess what? So again, I'm taking a fair amount of time, but to say the environment in which people work is most important. So to go to, say, for instance, let's change the setting and go into the workplace. The first question I would look at when, or one of the things I would like to do when visiting a place is to visit the startup. And the first thing that I would look at is where are the supervisors? What are the supervisors doing? Are they on the floor greeting people when they come in? Or they're busy doing whatever busy work they've got to do? And it's surprising how I would say 80% of the places, supervisors are pretty hard to find. Or the management has set up a meeting first thing in the morning. So they're not on the floor, they're in an office somewhere and discussing whatever it is that they've got to discuss. And my reaction is wrong, the first thing that they should have in mind is greeting people, finding out how they are, what's happening with them, and things of that sort. That's part of the environment. So when you look at the performance of an organization, motivation is very much affected by how people start their day. Because before you show up at work, most probably you already know what you're going to find. Oh, boy, it's Friday. Great. This is the last day. We got 2 days, or actually, today's Thursday. We got 3 days off. Wow, long weekend. Wow, as compared to say, wow, I've got to work today. I've got to do something. This is so the performance is very much affected by attitude, and attitude is much affected by the environment that you're in. So that's one aspect. The second thing that I would like to do, which may surprise you, is when I visit the plant, is to go to the toilets. Why go to the toilets? Well, some places it's filthy. And that sends a message.
It's part of the environment, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So there are cues like that if when you visit the place, you get very quickly a feel for what's important in the organization. You visit the plant, like say for instance, Toyota, you will see as you enter pictures of people. You see a person of the week or the month or the year or whatever. You have recognition of some performance of one sort or another. In some other places, you see nothing, bare walls kind of thing. Again, there's a contrast. Why do they do that in the first place or not do it? Yeah, it's a chore to maintain it and to keep it up to date, but it shows also what's important to the organization.
And it's
If
part of the environment. If what's on the walls stays the same all the time, all year long,
yeah,
that sends a
but
message about the environment and it affects the attitude.
exactly, exactly. At one time, I was in Boston. I was on an advisory board to a hospital there, and I looked at one of the walls, and all the stuff was at least 6 months old. And I say, well, what's going on? The point is they were talking the words, but it didn't. The actions weren't following. Okay, so you have to look at the work areas. You've got to look at the personal areas like toilets. Where do people eat? Do they eat next to their machine, or do they have a cafeteria? Is that cafeteria pleasant, or is it oppressive? So all of that
Op-
contribute.
Open the door to the microwave. Is it clean? Is it clean?
Uh,
Okay. I've got a question at this point. Do you think
yes.
music contributes to environment? Do you recommend it? Not recommend it?
Well, in in um, in the shopping area, I can understand that
Yeah.
because you're trying to blend all the noise and create a relaxed atmosphere.
Okay.
In the work area, I would question that.
Okay.
In an office area or even on the floor somewhere where machinery and stuff like that is working.
Yes.
So it's a mixed bag.
Okay.
But the point is that you ought to be cognizant of your existing conditions. And when I say conditions, I mean the facilities, the behavior, the kind of social interaction that takes place or doesn't take place.
Yeah. The tone.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that goes back to the what's important to the management. One place in one plant in Japan, I remember, I saw a board that had some stuff that was totally different. I don't read Japanese, but I could tell that it was different. So I asked, "What's that?" Oh, they said that we put this information for our employees to understand what the state of the economy is, the level of competition that we're facing, and all that environment in which we find outside of the plant that they ought to be aware of so that they understand what the implications are for them in their work environment. Okay. Again, it's an illustration. I'm not just saying everybody has to do all that the same way, but the point is it reflected management's attitude that the employees ought to be informed so that they understand the environment in which the company competes in, so that they can also respond accordingly to help cope with whatever it is that's going on.
Seems like a sign of respect
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
and equipping them with what they need to move forward.
Yeah, yeah. So that's one of the thing I wanted to stress today is the facilities and the social interaction communicates the values that the organization holds, and it really affects behavior and performance of individuals.
Thank you for this. We're about out of time.
Yes.
Anything further?
And in some ways, when you look at Gallup's Q12, the things that Gallup has found is important for people to be engaged. Uh, one of the things when at work, do I have the opportunity to do my best? Uh, my supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. Well, I wouldn't even look at someone at work as a, does my supervisor care? Um, so you have even within those 12 key factors that they found, the a reflection of the environment, the conditions of the environment that the employees find themselves, and how it affects their attitude and their behavior.
That's excellent. Thank you very much.
So it takes a certain amount of discipline, especially for the management, when you're used to it day in, day out, and to step aside and take a fresh look
Yes, I see what you're
because
saying.
you get accustomed to that's the way it is kind of thing. And yet you ought to, you know, say, is that good or is that bad or how can we improve?
Yes.
There's always room for improvement.
And if you get accustomed to how things are, you might be tempted to say, well, I don't have time to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's not important.
Right.
Very good.
Okay. Well, thank you. I look forward to more.
Have a